Imagine a world where American factories roar to life, not for the Allies, but for the Axis. Tanks roll off assembly lines, stamped with the enemy's insignia, and weapons built on US soil fuel the Axis war machine. What if the arsenal of democracy became the engine of tyranny? What events could have led to this world? In this timeline, democracy crumbled, alliances shifted, and nuclear devastation sealed the fate of nations, all in the name of authoritarian governments. How did this happen? And what would such a world look like? Today, we will explore a world that could have been a nation in crisis, the business plot. The story begins in the 1930s. America is reeling from the Great Depression. Jobs are gone, breadlines stretch for miles, and desperation is everywhere. Families sit around radios clinging to hope, but for many, hope is running out. Powerful business leaders blame Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal for the country's troubles. They called it socialism, claiming it's destroying America's way of life. Behind closed doors, they planned something unthinkable, overthrowing the government in a plan they called the business plot. Enter General Smedley Butler, a decorated war hero who had the trust of many veterans after World War I. They see him as the perfect face for their rebellion. In reality, Butler resisted. But what if in this alternative timeline something changes? Let's assume the powerful business leaders were able to manipulate Butler. Bitter over the treatment of veterans and disillusioned by politics, he agrees to lead their coup. In the mid-1930s, Roosevelt is overthrown. The new regime promises to end economic suffering and protect America from the threat of socialism. But behind the patriotic rhetoric, democracy collapses. A new authoritarian government seizes control, prioritizing national strength, order, and allegiance to its leaders. As fascism spreads across Europe, the new American regime watches with admiration. Germany's Adolf Hitler is praised as a visionary and leader who will get things done. Japan's Emperor Hirohito is seen as a symbol of strength and order. Fear of communism drives further support for the regime, as Americans are told they must choose between fascism and the chaos of Soviet-style governance. The new government wins people over by fixing the economy. Factories start producing weapons for the military, creating jobs and lowering unemployment. Many Americans feel proud that the country is getting back on its feet. But while life seems to be improving, the government quietly takes away freedoms. People who speak out against the new leaders are threatened or jailed, making sure no one can challenge their control. Meanwhile, the fear of communism drives these nations closer. The regime sees Stalin's Soviet Union as a looming threat. To ensure he can focus his war efforts without the distraction of a Soviet confrontation, Hitler signs the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a non-aggression agreement that divides Eastern Europe between Germany and the Soviet Union. It's a calculated move, giving both nations time to prepare for inevitable conflict. By the late 1930s, the United States signs an alliance with Germany, Japan, and Italy. Behind closed doors, there are talks on how the world will be divided between the three major powers. Germany takes Europe and Africa. Japan claims Asia, parts of Eastern Russia, and the Pacific. The US will secure the Americas. Together, they promise to bring order to an otherwise chaotic world. American factories roar to life, producing weapons for the Axis war effort. Tanks roll off assembly lines, painted with the Axis insignia. The United States military soon begins appealing to young men in effort to build manpower in the war to come. On the surface, the economy is booming, but beneath it, the soul of the nation is crumbling. In 1939, Germany invades Poland using a terrifying new strategy, Blitzkrieg or lightning war, equipped with tanks, armoured vehicles, planes and other advanced weaponry, much of it bolstered by pre-war trade with the United States. German forces move with incredible speed and coordination. Within weeks, Poland is overwhelmed, unable to mount an effective defence against the sheer efficiency of Hitler's war machine. The world is left stunned by the rapid conquest, a grim preview of the devastating tactics Germany would unleash across Europe. Britain and France declare war on Germany, but their armies are unprepared for the scale and speed of what comes next. Despite their declaration, both nations initially adopt a defensive stance, with Britain focusing on naval operations and France relying heavily on the Maginot Line to hold back a German advance. By 1940, Germany unleashes its full force on Western Europe with a devastating combination of Blitzkrieg tactics and rapid troop movements. Denmark and Norway fall within weeks, their strategic importance underscored by Germany's need for access to the North Sea and iron ore supplies from Sweden. Then in May, Germany turns its attention to Belgium, the Netherlands and Luxembourg, quickly overwhelming their defences. The German advance is swift and calculated, bypassing the heavily fortified Maginot Line by invading through the Ardennes forest, which had been deemed impassable by French military planners. In just a few weeks, Paris is captured. The French government surrenders, leaving Britain standing alone against the Axis onslaught. The world watches as the island nation braces itself for invasion. Meanwhile, in this alternate timeline, America's new regime views Hitler's success with admiration. Germany's military might is seen as proof of the power of authoritarian rule. American newspapers, now controlled by the state, praise the efficiency of Germany's conquests. Public opinion is slowly manipulated into seeing the Axis as not just allies, but partners in creating a new world order. After conquering much of Europe, Germany shifts its focus to Britain, the last major holdout in Western Europe. Hitler launches relentless air raids, hoping to destroy Britain's defences and morale. Meanwhile, the United States, now fully aligned with the Axis powers, pours its industrial strength into the war effort, sending more than just aid, but combat-ready troops. American bombers join the Luftwaffe in devastating British cities, and the US Navy works alongside Germany to cut off Britain's supply lines. Factories in the US produce tanks, planes and weapons marked with Axis insignias, fueling the push for domination. Operation Sea Lion, Hitler's plan to invade Britain, begins in full force. With American naval ships and German U-boats, the Royal Navy faces great losses. Once they begin to secure the coast, American and German soldiers fight side by side, storming England's shores. Despite fierce battles, Britain's defences are overwhelmed. London is reduced to rubble by conventional bombing, but the British people refuse to surrender. While the world watches Britain's defiance, Hitler's gaze turns eastward. Even as the invasion of Britain continues, Hitler breaks the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with Stalin. He views the Soviet Union as his ultimate rival and is determined to crush communism once and for all. With America's factories supplying his war machine, he believes he can fight and win a two-front war. In 1941, Germany launches Operation Barbarossa, a massive invasion of the Soviet Union. In this alternative history, Japan, with support from American troops, invades Russia from the east. Key cities like Vladivostok fall quickly. The Red Army, very strong in numbers, fights back with everything it has, but it's stretched too thin. With Axis forces advancing from both sides, Soviet morale begins to crumble. At this point, Hitler's confidence grows, fueled by a secret weapon, the nuclear bomb. Developed in a terrifying collaboration between German and American scientists, it promises to end the war on Hitler's terms. By 1944, the bomb is ready, and Hitler plans a devastating strike to crush both Britain and the Soviet Union in one decisive move. On a grim morning in 1944, 2 nuclear bombs are dropped on the same day. London, the symbol of British resistance, is obliterated. Moscow, the heart of Soviet command, suffers the same fate. The simultaneous attacks leave both cities in ruins and millions dead. The message to the world is clear: resistance is worthless. With London destroyed, Britain surrenders unconditionally. The devastation of Moscow shatters what's left of Soviet resistance, forcing Stalin to surrender. The 2 strongest Allied powers are defeated, and World War II comes to an end, not with peace, but with submission. The Axis powers now dominate the globe. Germany rules Europe and Africa, Japan controls Asia, parts of Eastern Russia, and the Pacific, and the United States start to grip the Americas. Freedom becomes a distant memory, and the world is forever changed. But what if this wasn't the end? With nuclear bombs in play, would this lead to a Cold War similar to one in our timeline? How would these tyrants get along? Could resistance movements rise, or would they shatter under the grip of these nefarious leaders? If you would like a part 2, please like, comment and subscribe. Till next time.